Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to Andrew Wilbar, Fantasy Football and NFL Draft, your home for Fantasy Football and the NFL Draft. My name is Andrew Wilbar, alongside Khaliba King on YouTube. Follow him and subscribe to his channel on YouTube. Be sure to go and check him out. How's it going, man?
What's going on? It's doing good.
I've been looking forward to this. He's been following my YouTube channel really since I started back at the beginning of COVID. So kind of paid attention to each other some. I've kind of lost I don't have a whole lot of time to dedicate to YouTube anymore, but still enjoy checking out his stuff. So be sure to go and check him out. Today, we're going to do a short video just on ranking the three best teams in the AFC and the NFC, top three teams on both sides of the NFL, and just figuring out, maybe why we think that way. There's a lot more depth that seems to be in the AFC than the NFC right now. Seems like the NFC is a little bit thin. But I'm excited to see how this turns out. So let's start with you. Let's go for the NFC. Who do you think is the best team in the NFC?
I got to go with the Super Bowl champs, Los Angeles Rams.
I've got to as well. And, I know they don't have a ton of depth on the defensive side of the ball, but when you have a game wrecker like Aaron Donald, they've added a couple small pieces on the defensive line. And really, the addition of Allen Robinson, okay, they lose Robert Woods. That kind of balances out. But really, if Cam Akers can come back healthy, and they've got a good running game as well.
For sure. I think Robinson's a better receiver than Woods, and then you replace Miller with Bobby Wagner on the defense.
That's true. Bobby Wagner, that was the big addition that I had kind of forgotten about. But definitely, guys, he's going to rack up some tackles. They have struggled mightily at times against the run, being able to stop the run. Of course, it's kind of the one downside of having Aaron Donald as your nose tackle, kind of a little bit undersized, not the greatest against the run, but makes up for it with his abilities as a pass rusher. So I've got to agree. I'm going to go with the Rams as my number one team. Who do you have at number two?
I'm going to go with Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm ready.
All right.
Still there for another year.
Do you think that Gronkowski retiring, do you think that's going to have a big effect on Brady, or do you think they've got enough weapons to overcome that?
I think they got enough. You got Mike Evans still, Chris Godwin coming back from injury. Maybe this is the year O.J. Howard breaks out.
Yes, interesting. Well, O.J. Howard is actually with the Bills, which, believe it or not, I actually looked that up today. I wasn't even aware of it because it was kind of just it was kind of an off-ball signing, because I literally looked that up this morning because I'm looking at my fantasy teams. I'm like, hey, if Gronk's gone, maybe O.J. Howard can step into that role. And I'm like, oh, he signed with Buffalo. So I guess that's Cameron Brate's role now, but still a guy who's been competent in the past, guy who can be a good tight end. I don't have the Buccaneers in my top three, probably just because I have some anti-Tom Brady bias, being a Steelers fan. But
all good.
I'm gonna go with the Packers as my number two team. They can't seem to get over the hump, but I do like their new offensive coordinator coming in. Of course, they lost Luke Getsy to the Chicago Bears. But I think that the additions of Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs, who they added in the draft at wide receiver, I think that's going to help them kind of compensate the loss that they had with Devontae Adams. Maybe slow start, but also you have to consider the fact, Aaron Jones. Do you think they're going to use Aaron Jones more as a receiver this year and maybe use A.J. Dillon more in the backfield? Do you think that's a possibility?
I definitely think so. Aaron Jones, he's a good receiving back. Yeah,
and you look at, a lot of teams would love to have just one of those guys, but the Packers may be the best 1-2 punch in the league when you think of having Aaron Jones and then AJ Dillon. So who would you finish out as your third best team in the NFC? Who would you put in there?
There's a lot of good teams. I think I might have to go San Francisco 49ers.
You think Trey Lance is the quarterback, or do you think Jimmy G hangs around?
Well, it's definitely interesting what's going on there, but I think Trey Lance, he might be the guy. We haven't seen Jimmy Garoppolo throw in a while with that injury.
Definitely. If Trey Lance, I was a little bit skeptical coming out, but I've started to believe in him, especially being in Kyle Shanahan's system. Just seems like a really good fit for him. Of course, we'll see what happens with Deebo Samuel, but he still has Ayuk, still has Kittle. He has a really good offensive line and several good running backs, so it's going to be interesting to see where that is. I'm going to go with the Eagles as my third best team. A lot of people aren't picking them to even win the division. But when you look at the additions they made with James Bradbury at corner, they needed some depth at corner. Still a little bit concerning at safety, but along the defensive line, in addition of Jordan Davis, getting Nakobe Dean in the third round as a potential steal of the draft, guy who I thought could have easily gone in the first round if not for the injury.
That's
And
who I
then
wanted my Pats to take, man.
yeah, I was a little bit surprised that once he got to the third round, you guys didn't take him. I know he's not really the Belichick type of bigger linebacker; he's a little bit undersized, but still, that would have been a nice addition for you guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, with the Eagles, they've added to every part of the defense, and then on the offense, they still have most of their offensive line is still together. We'll see what happens with Andre Dillard. But adding AJ Brown, what do you think AJ Brown is going to be like in that offense with Jalen Hurts at the quarterback?
I think he's going to be what we've seen of him. He's going to be great, and he's going to do a lot in that offense.
Definitely. Let's move to the AFC real quick. Starting off at number one, a lot of people are starting to give the Buffalo Bills some love, and I agree. I think this could be the year that Josh Allen kind of gets over the hump. And is able to beat Mahomes. You see in fantasy drafts, he's honestly going ahead of Mahomes right now based on ADP. Do you think that's the Chiefs, the Bills? Do you like the Super Bowl, the last year's Super Bowl team from the AFC? The Bengals. Is there another team that you have at number one?
I hate to say it, but I've got to go with the Buffalo Bills.
Okay.
I don't want to, but they got a great team, dude.
They do. I'm rooting for Josh Allen. I'm a big fan of Josh Allen. I think at some point he's finally going to be able to knock off Mahomes and get to that next step. Of course, now he has Joe Burrow to contend with. The AFC is stacked with quarterbacks, man, with not Zach Wilson, Russell Wilson, in Denver, and of course Herbert coming up. There's so many good quarterbacks you have there. We'll see what happens with Deshaun Watson, but I'm gonna stick with the Chiefs just barely by the thinnest of margins. I believe the fact that they have such a tough division, it may work in their favor once they get to the playoffs because they will be so battle tested. They will have faced tough competition the whole year. I think that could really work in their favor. But two teams left before we get out of here. Who would be your number two team in the AFC?
Might be some recency bias, but I'm gonna go with the Denver Broncos. Russell Wilson. I think he takes that team with a huge leap. They're a lot better team with him at quarterback.
It's true. And their offensive line has kind of been all over the place, but it's not going to be any worse than what he had in Seattle for sure. He was always running for his life. And you look at the wide receivers, maybe not quite as good, but before the injury, Cortland Sutton was working his way up to being a wide receiver one. If he can get back to that form, they have a couple pieces in Okabunam at tight end. Still have Jerry Jeudy. They're going to have an interesting offense. Do you think Javonte Williams takes that lead role as the running back one in that offense, or do you still think Melvin Gordon's going to get his share of carries?
I think Gordon's going to get his carries here and there, but I think Javonte Williams is the better running back. Gordon, he's just getting older, and Williams, he's on the rise.
Yeah, Melvin Gordon is saying that he thinks they could be the best 1-2 punch in the league. I believe Good Morning Football was talking about a week and a half ago. They had a whole conversation on that. I think they even had him on the show, but they really push each other. We'll see how that works for them. I'm going to go with the team you had at number one, the Buffalo Bills at number two. Pretty much by everything you said, I'm not going to repeat it. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Gabriel Davis is a name to watch. He's getting a lot of love in fantasy leagues. Can he take that next step and be that number two wide receiver behind Stephon Diggs? Because they don't have a whole lot of weapons. Of course, we talked about OJ Howard, who they just added, and they still have Dawson Knox. So they have a couple of good tight ends, a good offensive line. We'll see what happens with their running backs. When you talk about James Cook, the new rookie, can he become that RB1 early on? Only time will tell. Finishing out your last team, your third team in the AFC, who you got?
A lot of teams are going to get left out. I want to say my Pats, but I got to go with the team that just made the Super Bowl and the Cincinnati Bengals.
So you're leaving Kansas City out of your top three.
Yeah.
Would they be
I don't
four?
know,
Are they all the way lower down the list? Like what makes you doubt Kansas City as of right now?
I'd say four, but Kansas City, they've lost a couple of pieces. I think they'll still be a great team, but as of right now, I just see the Bengals better as them.
It will be interesting to see, especially with the loss of Tyreek Hill. They added a lot of pieces, but do you think, with Juju Smith-Schuster, he's coming in, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, they drafted Sky Moore. Who do you think is going to get the bulk of the targets that Tyreek Hill left behind now that he's gone? Who do you think is going to become that wide receiver one? Is it going to be Juju? Is it going to be MVS? Is it going to be Sky Moore, the rookie? Who do you think kind of takes Tyreek Hill's role as the wide receiver one?
I'd probably have to say Juju, but a sleeper for me is the undrafted rookie Justin Ross out of Clemson.
I like it. he didn't test well at the combine, which made me a little bit skeptical, but I think part of it could be because he was still working his way back from the injury. Very talented receiver, 6'4", 210 pounds. It's going to be interesting to see. There are a couple guys in one of my dynasty leagues that was drafted him a little bit earlier than what I anticipated, but Kansas City seems high on him. They seem hopeful. He seems to be recovering well from the injury. So it will be interesting to see how that works out. Be sure to go and check him out. Kaliba King on YouTube. Don't forget it. Find me at behindthesteelcurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll see you next time.
All right.